Hey, what if Michigan does have a little more drop-off than is expected this year? This time of year, if you watch our show a fair amount, you know that typically, if I'm going to go either or, I lean more towards glass half full just because it's okay to be optimistic in the summer about teams. The bad times will come for plenty of you, but I do think it bears repeating that Michigan had a pretty historic season last year. And then you have a historic head coach hit the exit door, and you've got historic players hit the exit door. And so you're looking at your preview magazines right now, and Michigan's highly rated. Michigan is one of the odds-on favorite to contend for the Big Ten championship. They are one of the odds-on favorites to make the college football playoff. Their over-under win total is 8.5 right now. I think that just adjusted at FanDuel fairly recently. In fact, a lot of those numbers adjusted today. I'll talk about that later. But Michigan figures to be in the mix this year. Let's just say they aren't. 8-4 sounds like a bad year for Michigan. Yet the over-under win total is 8.5. So if the under hits, like the first number you come to is 8-4. What happens though? What's like the national conversation about them? To me, you ask me, what if Michigan isn't quite as good as the fan base hopes? Well, my response will be that's just college football. And I'd say that absent Sharon Moore, like remove Sharon Moore from the equation for a second. If Jim Harbaugh were still there this year and you had the amount of impact players walk out the door that they had, I'd expect a Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan team to fall back to earth a little bit this year. So if they do, I won't bat an eye at it. Now, I was talking earlier when we were as a staff meeting about the show, and someone said, okay, but even though it's not an actual sign of trouble down the road, what if it impacts recruiting? What if an 8-4 or a 7-5 season for Michigan negatively impacts recruiting? And to that, I said, if an 8-4 season derails Michigan's recruiting class, then they don't have the right staff recruiting up there. And I think they probably have the right staff recruiting. It's felt pretty good, and they have the ability, obviously with months down the road, still to improve on the class they're bringing in this cycle, but that normally works in an inverse manner. If you struggle on the field, but you've got premier resources and you've got a half-decent staff, they can sell playing time, they can sell opportunity, they can sell vision and future and whatnot. I highly doubt an 8-4 season would damage Michigan's recruiting profile at all. But if it did, that would actually be a bigger indication we've got issues than just the fact that they win 8-4. I mean, they got to play Texas in week 2. They got Southern Cal. They're a favorite against them in Ann Arbor. They go to Washington, Michigan State. They got Oregon that they are a field goal plus dog against at home. They go to Ohio State. There are several losable games here. 8-4 is not some crazy year. Everyone wants to think over. There are worlds where the under hits. And so if Michigan hits the under, what I'm trying to do is hopefully here on July 2nd, just get ourselves on record. It's not the end of the world if it happens. Next up, what if, now I want you all to listen to me. That includes a couple of people in the control room. What if we, as a college football public, viewed the Big 12 the way the Big 12 should be viewed? If you follow me on Twitter, some psychopath came at me earlier today and started calling me out because I called the Big 12 America's College Football Conference, which I have called it and which I will continue to call it, and I gave my reasons. There's no more competitive balance top to bottom in any conference in America than the Big 12. You want roster synergy, you want culture placed at a premium. It's never on more top to bottom display than it is in the Big 12. You don't ever hear about recruiting classes being bought in the Big 12. You don't hear a lot about coaching churn in the Big 12. Not that it doesn't happen, but whatever your vision of college football is and what it was yesterday and tradition and adherence to it, they've got it in the Big 12. That's why I call it America's College Football Conference. Also, you know me well enough to know I don't need you to be a playoff contender to enjoy watching you. I don't have that in common with everyone. So some guy came at me today and said, why don't you talk about the ACC that way? Well, because the ACC is not as fun to watch as the Big 12. And I yield back the balance of my time on that. I don't know what else he wanted from me. But anyway, what if you guys, some of you holdouts, and I know I have several, this has become a very spirited debate between me and portions of the audience. What if you guys just divorced yourself from casual logic for a second? What if you just said, okay, forget about the playoff for a second. Forget about the fact that Kansas may not necessarily be a favorite to win it all this year. but they could play in like half a dozen last possession games this year. What is enjoyable to me? That's all I'm asking. Because I long since divorced myself from thinking in line with the rest of college football and the who's in mentality and playoff implications being required for a game to have meaning to me. That's a loser's mentality to me if you're looking for an enjoyable Saturday, because you get less and less of them the later in the year you get. So the Big 12, I'm never sitting on this show telling you multiple championship favorites reside in this conference, because they don't. Quite the opposite. I am telling you, forget about championship implications. If you're just looking for pure, enjoyable, entertaining games, this is the conference for you. And if you view it through that prism, you never make these ridiculous comments that say, well, yeah, but what? Like if Iowa State plays Kansas State in one of the last weekends of the year and it's a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, I don't care if both of them have 2 losses. I don't care if at best they're looking to lock down a 10 seed in the playoff. It's college football. Not everything has to be about the man-made playoff that's been arbitrarily placed as a caboose masquerading as an engine on the back half of this train. And thirdly, we talked about Arkansas the other day. One of the complaints about the show over the last couple of years, if I'm being real with you, is that we have shown a little too much favoritism towards Arkansas. I know, right? I was as shocked as you guys. So I have taken a little Arkansas sabbatical, but it's over. We talked about Arkansas last show, and I've got a what if for you right here. Paper pop, just for old time's sake. What if Arkansas gets sideways early? Now, I didn't say we're going to talk good about Arkansas. We're just talking about Arkansas. So my what if is, what if things get sideways early for them? Their over-under win total is not 7.5, not 6.5, not 5.5. It's the reverse LeBron. You go down. It's 4.5. The good news is they play Arkansas Pine Bluff in week 1. The bad news is basically the rest of the schedule. So they go to Oklahoma State in week 2. They will be an underdog there. They play UAB in week 3. They go to Auburn in week 4. They will be an underdog. They play Texas A&M in Dallas in week 5. They will be an underdog. They play Tennessee at home week 6. They will be an underdog. Then there's a bye week. Are they going to be 2-4? And if they are, I think we all understand what the conversation would be around Sam Pittman, Bobby Petrino. You may call him the offensive coordinator. Many call him the interim or the head coach in waiting up there. How fun to be a head coach in waiting when you've already once upon a time been the head coach. So, look, we love our boy Sam Pittman. I love Arkansas. I don't really care if you guys know that. I love Arkansas. So I hope I'm wrong on this, but I mean, it's not looking all that incredibly promising at the moment. So what if it just does nothing more than play out the way odds makers think it's going to play out? Uncomfortable conversations will be had. And then it doesn't get any better. They come out of the bye week. They got LSU at Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Bye week again. Texas is on here. At Missouri is on here. It's going to be a tough year in Fayetteville. And then at that point, is it one of those situations where we're waiting to the end of the year and then we're going to make a change? Do we get ahead of the curve and make a change in the middle of the year? If we think we've already got the replacement in-house, does it matter when we make the change? So a lot of what ifs floating around the country and especially that conference right now.